back to Fully Equipped. J-Wall, Uncle Gene, Serial Killer. Boys, how we doing? Somebody's banging on something already. It's like a bongo drum or something. I don't know what that noise was, but
I'm bongo free. I would blame Gene.
That was me.
It was Uncle Gene banging the table already. Boys,
he's ready to party.
Yes,
yeah,
clearly.
Very excited. It's 6:51 in the morning.
Yeah, we've had Fully Equipped After Dark. Now we got Fully Equipped Sunrise Edition. And
Gene,
we're just
you
mixing
probably
up the
wake up
recording
at like,
time.
5 a.m., 4 a.m.?
Yeah, us old folk, between our urination schedule and our need to get our insure in our body, we're up early.
Well, at least you said it, because I was going to allude to that. But yeah, you totally killed my joke. There's the middle finger. Maybe you're watching this on our Fully Equipped YouTube page at Fully Equipped Golf. If you are, you saw that. If not,
No,
hey, go like and subscribe. But
I'm a watch Gene flip off J-Wall.
It's a weekly thing.
Yeah. No, I'm a total sun rhythm guy. Whenever the sun comes up, I come up. If it comes up at 7:38, that's like my natural time to wake up. If it comes up at 5:45, eyes are popping open. So, little TMI there.
What's that to say? Kris is looking at you like you got three eyes. I don't think he does the same thing.
With as much as I bounce around the country and time zones all over the place, and my body is a mess. It never knows what the hell time it is, and it's just always in a constant state of where am I and what time is it and when are things. And I was sitting there having breakfast this morning, eating my my Raisin Bran Crunch, and
Raisin Bran Crunch, no Lucky Charms, no.
I was Raisin Bran crunching this morning, and
crunch. All right, okay.
Hear my alarm going off, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And forgot we changed the recording time from 7 a.m. to 6:35, and I was like, oh, so here I am.
There we are.
I'm one bowl of Raisin Bran Crunch already in, and rocking my V8 Energy. It's half juice, so that's good. I got that going for me. Ready to party.
I've been getting up at 5:45 a.m. since last
horrible.
week. Oldest daughter's had volleyball tryouts, made the team, made it through the first round of cuts, made it through second round of cuts, made the team. And now she's having to show up to school at 6:30 a.m. So, it's been lovely. But anyway, I'm gonna kick this week's podcast off by roasting my own golf swing. If you didn't see it, go check out YouTube at Fully Equipped Golf. Like we said, I had a chance to go to TPI and test all the new GT product. Now the videos are more focused, at least for right now, on the drivers. I had a chance to test out specifically the GT2 and the GT3. It's a fun video. Joey Saywitz, shout out Joey, who's my fitting guru over at TPI. He and I have worked together for a few years now, and he's starting to get a feel for my swing, which, oh man, it's interesting. You're on the driving range and you're taking cuts with the driver, and you're like, all right, it feels okay. And you're making decent contact eventually, and like I was, the beginning was brutal, and it started to get better. And so I'm watching this video. It was more just to make sure that when we were going through the editing process that everything looked clean. But I got to tell you, boys, I got to get out and play more golf. I had some people tell me like, man, you got a good move. My transition is garbage. It is really quick, and it reminded me of a really funny story. Years ago, Jim Flick, one of my all-time favorite people, also Definitely. One of the greatest instructors of all time. I was at an event with Mr. Flick because I called him Mr. Flick, at Bandon, and it was for a TaylorMade putter launch, and they had golf, and it was a good couple of days there. And so while we were playing, Mr. Flick was going around to each of the groups and kind of hanging out and chatting. And he came up to me on one of the holes and he said, Mr. Jonathan, he goes, were you a male gigolo in a previous life? And I said, excuse me, Mr. Flick? He goes, were you a male gigolo? I said, no, Mr. Flick. He goes, well, you have some of the fastest hips I have ever seen. So you must have been a male gigolo. And I just like burst out laughing because that was just him. That was Jim Flick. He had those like one-liners teed up. And ever since then, I've worked on trying to just make the transition a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner on the downswing. But yeah, Mr. Flick, I know you're up there laughing at me, but it's still there and it just is brutal. I can't figure it out. But it's like when you look at your own swing from the other side, it always looks worse. Yes, no, maybe so.
100% agree. I look at my swing on video and
slow to go fast, baby. That's all it is. Slow to go fast. Got to start slow and let all that rip at the end.
I know, but that's where I've got it. It's at the end. I'm unloading, but it looks ghastly. It does not look good. Maybe I'm beating up my swing too much, but it does.
Well, but slow down that beginning part. Feel like you're falling out of bed when you start that swing, and you still will be accelerating. I think that's one of the things about the swing that not a lot of people, especially a lot of amateur golfers, don't realize. There's this immediate assumption that, and I know this from my robot, and it's really fascinating, that you have to apply full power at the beginning. You have to kill something like you're just banging something with a hammer as hard as you can. And what that causes is early release of that club as you get quick like that, and you actually lose power. And we've quantified with the same amount of power, a late release or lag versus an early release at like 90 miles an hour, we can get up to 6 miles an hour more club head speed by holding on and letting centrifugal force and letting angular velocity accelerate through. And the difference is if we start with 50 or 60% at the beginning. So if we have like 20 amps of power and we start with 10 or 11, amps, or if we start with 2 or 3 amps, there's a complete difference. And what's so wild, even with the robot, you can see it's a much smoother swing, and you can just feel the acceleration as it comes into impact is different. Same club head speed, you're reaching I can adjust it for the same club head speed, but it's just wild. Even with the machine, you can duplicate different acceleration rates and see what the effects are. And the bottom line is there's graphs of acceleration that we do, and we do this for shaft testing a lot. So for example, you can have 2 shafts, a weaker shaft and a stiffer shaft, and you can have, say, 95 miles an hour club head speed. The problem with 95 miles an hour club head speed is that is a snapshot right at the end that the launch monitor takes. But if you get on some of these systems that have accelerometers or cameras, you start seeing the acceleration of that club head speed. Everyone accelerates up. No one accelerates down or anything like that, unless you just literally stop the club like halfway through your swing. Now, someone who casts, it'll be kind of a gradual, almost linear acceleration. Someone who lags and holds on and releases, it almost goes straight vertical at the end. And it's so wild to see how the acceleration. Now, club head speed, once again, 95 miles an hour. And, Kris, I'm going to let you chime in here because this is where you do your magic truly, is you get 95 miles an hour of club head speed, and a good fitter has to be able to look and see who is quick and who is late and what kind of shafts that they need to fit to, because those acceleration rates cause completely different bend profiles. Now, the one cool thing about the robot is we can change those acceleration rates. We have the ability to program that. And in programming that, the rule of thumb the faster the acceleration, usually the stiffer the implement. And the reason for that is, imagine something weaker with all of that force, you get a little bit of lag and that club head has a tendency of staying open. But acceleration, angular velocity, these are all terms that people in the industry know, but they're not common for golfers, but they are the cornerstone for fitting of shafts. Clubhead speed is merely a snapshot, but at the end of the day, if you don't know how you reach that clubhead speed, then you do not know what type of shaft that you're going to need to be most effective and most consistent as you go through.
Yeah, that's, I mean, when it comes to fitting applications, the conservation of angular momentum is what we refer to it as. And essentially what that translates to, for easier to digest terminology, is load patterns. So force that you're applying when you change direction at the top of the backswing. And then you marry the shaft profile to the release pattern. So load pattern, changing direction at the top, release pattern as you transition through the impact zone. And to Gene's point, how fast or how quickly, how much load you apply to the shaft at the top of the backswing versus how quick you release your hands through impact, that's where we start to manipulate weight, quote unquote flex, what I kind of refer to more as bend profile. So understanding, like we've talked about before, there is no industry standard for flex. So essentially, when you get into a brand agnostic environment like we have at Spec, and we start looking at a variety of different bend profiles, we start looking at a variety of different weights from different manufacturers and different materials that they use, understanding the micro sections of handle section, midsection, tip section, and how they marry basically to a player's load pattern and release pattern. You start to pre-qualify a few different shafts before you even go into the testing phase. And where Gene was kind of talking about that tempo, that rhythmic transition versus somebody that is herky-jerky or, a gigolo like J-Wall, you may need to manipulate the weight, the bend profile, and where it flexes, how it flexes based upon how the player loads and releases the shaft. So it's kind of a fun puzzle to solve, but you do have an opportunity to pre-qualify a few things just by observing. And there are plenty of parts out there that complement a variety of different load pattern, release pattern, swing types. It's fun to do some testing when it comes to a player that is in the wrong shaft, and then all of a sudden you pair them up with something that times with them correctly, and they're just, oh, I've never felt that before, and it's just that cool aha moment. I love it.
Yeah, but that's where I mean, I would say that, Kris, you're more like a gear sommelier, where you know how to pair specific shafts for the way that golfers are loading or releasing the golf club, because as you guys pointed out, there's not a uniform flex across the board throughout the industry. So an X for one brand is gonna load differently than it would for another. And that's scary, because for the most part, unless you know how these parts are going to perform and who they're going to benefit, I mean, golfers nowadays, if you go and you pick up a driver, there's a set number of shafts within the stock SKU, and then of course you can pay up for the premium stuff. But if you don't, unless you know what you're buying and how it's going to perform, you're buying a golf club that you might as well have just walked in there with a blindfold over your eyes. I mean, it's just that scary. So anyway, well, look at that, roasting my own golf swing. We got a nice little conversation about shaft flex and load right at the top of the pod. So all right, before we get into the next topic, I want to let you know that Fully Equipped is brought to you by good friends at Nikon and their Cool Shot Pro 2 stabilized rangefinder. We talked about this last week. This rangefinder does a whole lot of stuff. It is Nikon's high-performance stabilization system that's designed to reduce vibrations of the image in the viewfinder caused by hand movements. As the technology provides a precise reading, giving the user more confidence in their game. In addition to the stabilization system, this also has a dual locked-on echo technology. And this is probably one of the coolest features. It's a greenlit circle in the OLED display that emits an audible sound that lets you know if you're locked onto the target. Because one of the things that rangefinders don't always do is lock onto the target that you are going to be shooting at. Sometimes it's catching a tree in the background or a bunker, something that you probably don't want to be reading. In addition to that, it has a crystal clear OLED display and a hyper-read technology that gives the users a fast and accurate measurement response regardless of the distance. If you want to learn more about Nikon's CoolShot Pro 2 Stabilized, go check it out on Nikon's website. And also, Nikon's rangefinders are now available on fairwayjockey.com for purchase if you want to go check them out there. And thanks again to Nikon for being a sponsor of the pod. All right, boys. Well, we're going from roasting my golf swing to talking about high-lofted fairway woods. So
before we get into that, Gene, did you get your rangefinder? Did you get it? I just wanted to see if you got a CoolShot Pro 2 rangefinder yet.
Come on, man. You know I'm not management. I'm just the hired help. I mean, I just take the table scraps whenever I get them.
Where'd you get that rangefinder, Kris?
Oh, my buddy over at golf sent this to me, and I was so stoked to use it last Sunday, and we got rained out. But gonna be playing some golf later this week, and my rangefinder, almost perfectly timed, crapped out on me. The optics is, or the optic in my current rangefinder is about 60% burnout at this point in time, and the manufacturer is like, yeah, it's pretty much toast. It's better off to replace than repair. And Nikon comes to the rescue with the sponsorship of the pod, and then my buddy Jay Wall sends me one. So I am stoked. I appreciate it. I am absolutely going to be taking this out on the golf course and enjoying it later this week, and I will report back with firsthand accounts of how this guy works. But I was going through the manual that comes with this guy, and I mean, there are so many features that come on this rangefinder, and as a tech nerd, I love it. So many gadgets and buttons and settings and modes and all the cool things to play with.
Yeah, you saw I sent you the manual, and you're exactly right. I mean, even I was doing the read. I mean, one of the things that I didn't even point out, which is really important too. I mean, look, the most important one is being able to lock onto your target. That one is something that the Pro 2 Stabilized can do, but it also has the incline decline technology, so it's slope adjusted. So if you're going to play, and we're going to get into that, we're going to get into elevation because they are playing at Castle Pines in Colorado this week for the PGA Tour and the BMW Championship. So talk a little bit about that. But before we do, so as I mentioned, high-lofted fairway woods have become ubiquitous on the PGA Tour. I mean, they're everywhere nowadays. And a lot of that has to do with trying to match up a fairway wood to faster swing speeds. I mean, we're seeing guys that are just absolutely ripping at the golf ball, and sometimes 3 woods just don't cut it. Simply put, it's one of those golf clubs where it gets too close to the driver. We also talked about that last week with my mini driver dilemma. But it's one of those clubs that gets too close, and that's why we've seen more pros going to probably more like a 4-wood, maybe even a 5-wood, depending on how fast you are. And so I was trying to find the origin of the high-lofted fairway. And I started going back, and I mean, I would say back in the 90s, Kris, it was Paul Azinger, I would say, was a guy who probably popularized the high-lofted fairway metal. But I was trying to go back beyond that. And one of the cool features, if you aren't an Inside Golf member on golf.com, I mean, it's dirt cheap to be an Inside Golf member. But one of the cool features that you can get access to is the old archives from Golf Magazine. So they went back and they scanned, I think, all the way through like the 60s, 50s, 60s. They went back and they scanned in all the old issues in the magazine. And it's cool because you can type in whatever and it'll populate whichever magazine issues it was that had whatever topic it is. So for me, when I was going back and looking at high-lofted fairways, I came across a story from '82 on Lee Trevino. And Trevino, of all people, I would say he probably helped popularize the high-lofted fairway during the persimmon era, which is just really neat because if you think about where we are with golf technology today, you have CAD, you have, we're having 3D printed products now. Back in the persimmon age, you didn't have that ability. So you couldn't just create a golf club, prototype it, take it out for a guy and see what happens. I mean, you got one shot, and if you didn't get it right, you were going to have to go back to another block of wood and try and figure it out. So Trevino told a story in an '82 issue of the mag. He called his 6-wood. Now, I would say his 6-wood, if you look at like today's lofts, is probably more like a 7-wood, which is still pretty popular club. And he was talking about how his 6-wood was the most versatile club in his bag. He called it his baby. And because he needed more loft on this club that he was trying to get in the bag, he took his club designer took a 3-wood and put 6-wood loft on it. And this to me is like one of the coolest stories because I would say Trevino was Phil before Phil came along. I mean, he was doing stuff that most guys weren't even considering at the time. So this is a quote from Lee. He said, he cut the face back deep into the head so the actual size of the club head is that of most 5-woods, maybe even a 4-wood. In this manner, I was able to get a bit of a deeper face, which helps get the ball up quicker and easier out of the rough. It also increases the margin for error. He said to accommodate all this weight that he needed to have in the head because he was trying to achieve a D5 swing weight, which is really freaking heavy. He had the club maker put a full brass sole plate on the bottom. And then in addition to that, he had lead that was sandwiched in between the persimmon and that brass sole plate to help basically get that golf ball even more in the air. And so you're thinking, man, that's a really heavy head. Like, what else is he doing to that golf club? So he's taking a 3-wood head, he's turned it into a 6-wood. He's got the brass sole plate. He has the lead sandwich in between. Then he said it's actually a stiff shaft. And this is back during steel. Graphite's not a thing at this point. And he tipped it about 3 inches. And he said the combination of the lower center of gravity and no flex action in the shaft almost gives me the feeling of hitting my iron or even a wedge. And he used this club everywhere. Like he talked about I even found stories talking about with Lee going through like the versatility of certain clubs in his bag. And he said that he could hit his 6-wood from 150 yards out of the rough, just kind of pop it up and get it on the green. But the struggle for him that made him start looking at high-lofted fairways was he constantly found it difficult, especially going into elevated greens, to hold the putting surface. Because back in the late 70s, traditional long irons were still a thing. I mean, most pros were using them. And now Lee is finding the 6-wood to be the benefit for him out of the rough from the fairway. I just thought that was a cool story. You know, there's recency bias always tells you, okay, well, 7-woods are really popular now, but they probably weren't that popular back in the day. And there's always somebody who was tinkering around. Phil Mickelson, as I mentioned, did a great job of really pushing the envelope. He was using 2 drivers when he won the Masters. He used the Frankenwood. He was, I would say, really he was kind of the torchbearer for the mini driver. So, Phil did a lot of things that are now common out in the marketplace. But yeah, Lee Trevino, I thought that was a cool story.
That's a very cool story. Yeah. And Lee Trevino, go figure, the statesman and an innovator for introducing the high-lofted fairway wood to the mainstream tour. That's cool.
It is very cool. But it does bring up the obvious question for golfers. I mean, again, high-lofted fairway wood's very popular nowadays. I think the popularity on tour has allowed recreational golfers to embrace these clubs. I think for years, everybody would see a high-lofted fairway, a 7-wood, a 9-wood, and they'd think it was a hacker golf club. You had to be Mr. Haverkamp or somebody with really low swing speed to be able to get a benefit from this golf club, but not anymore. I think that's totally the script has been flipped, but it does always bring up the obvious question of who benefits the most from high-lofted fairway woods. I mean, from your experience fitting golfers, who's the golfer that benefits the most from a 7-wood or a 9-wood?
I mean, realistically, the demographic is broad, to say the least. So, I mean, if you look at basically like how the different clubs are designed, from iron to hybrid or rescue or higher lofted fairway wood, when you start redistributing weight, moving CG around, playing with depth and size and shape of head and face, for me, I mean, I can speak personally to this because I play a higher lofted fairway wood. I am a low launch, low spin player that fights a left miss. And for me, when I was doing my own independent testing, long irons, while I preferred the look, just didn't hit them high enough with enough spin to make them realistic in my bag. So I started down this rabbit hole years and years and years ago, trying to figure out how I can come up with something that launches the ball higher, spins the ball more, that I can hit into a green, that I could potentially hit out of the rough and not have to worry about the left miss. And I can't even begin to tell you how many hybrids or rescues that I tested, and in a smaller, more compact head design, and the majority of that weight being positioned closer towards the heel and into the hosel section of the golf club. And you think about essentially the design component being long iron replacements, and the majority of players out there, right-handed players struggling with a right miss, pushes, slices, things like that. Those particular golf clubs were very draw biased for somebody that already had a left miss. So enter the higher lofted fairway wood, and a little bit more neutral. It's a larger head, CG's a little bit deeper, more resistant to twisting. And for me, it just became kind of the easy button, kind of like you were saying about Trevino, that I can hit this thing anywhere and everywhere. And currently I've had a Callaway Paradigm Heavenwood, 20-degree Heavenwood in my bag, in addition to a 3-wood for the last couple of years now. And I test everything, obviously, kind of like Gene does. Yep. And go through and
Gene's a robot, tests everything. Gene doesn't test anything. Gene's a robot, tests everything.
I mean, the operator is still gathering data,
he presses the button. Let's be clear.
I have to give Gene more credit. I mean, he designs the robot. So, I mean, I'm in so facto, Gene is testing. But that high lofted fairway wood for me has been fantastic. And I'm not a scratch player anymore. I don't work on my game as much as I used to, but I mean, I still play to a 3 index. And that fairway wood is one of my favorite clubs in my bag. And every year I test and test and test and test. And I mean, this particular year, the Paradigm stayed in the bag, didn't replace it. And it's going to be tough to get that thing out of my bag. It's got to be something that's really good. But we have another fitter that I was just having a conversation with yesterday. I mean, he plays to scratch. He's a little bit slower with his club head speed, but was even entertaining the idea of a 9-wood. So he may be tinkering around with a 9-wood in the coming weeks here. We've got a couple of heads coming in for him to do some tinkering and testing with. So see what we come up with. I can report back, but they are ever gaining in popularity.
Yeah. I know we did, Gene, we ran the 7-wood 3 hybrid and a 3-iron test, because those clubs tend to be ones where you can, swap them in and out. I was shocked by the discrepancy in launch and spin for these golf clubs. I mean, the yardages were, I mean, save for the 3 hybrid, which was, I mean, basically 25 yards longer than the 7 wood and about 20 yards longer than the 3 iron. I mean, the 7 wood and the 3 iron in particular, I mean, had very similar carry yardages, but man, they don't spin the same, which I find to be absolutely fascinating.
And they didn't launch the same. And to be fair, in that test, and we talked about that in that video, we had to pick a speed, and we picked a speed kind of right in between. And by picking the speed right in between, we gave an advantage to the hybrid. If we would have picked a speed 10 or 15 miles an hour faster, we would have given an advantage to the 3 iron. If we would have picked a speed 10 or 15 miles an hour slower, we would have given an advantage to the 7 wood. So, you know, to Kris's point about kind of fitting, some of it's velocity based, but some of it is how you deliver the club head. And, you know, if you could be a slow swinging player, but a real high ball hitter and benefit from, say, a 3 iron in that regard, because you can get the ball up in the air, or vice versa. So while speed is probably the number one component, the number 2 is how you present the club at impact. Are you descending? Are you ascending? As far as an attack angle is concerned, what is your dynamic loft coming in? So there are a number of different variables, but the general rule of thumb is an iron will launch lower and spin the least just due to its loft angle. The hybrid's going to be in the middle, and the 7 wood is going to be at the end with the higher launch, higher spin. It's important to know that when you go in and get fitted or start looking at clubs, kind of where are the gaps in your bag? What do you need, and what are you using this club for? Are you using this club, for example, on a tight par 4 and you're just trying to stripe it out there, or are you trying to hold greens? So, you know, at that point, it's really important to kind of look at these 3 different pieces of equipment and see what their strengths and weaknesses are and how that, you know, best suits your game.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, your swing speed plays such an important role in, like, each one of these clubs is going to benefit certain swing speeds. And, like, what are you trying to accomplish with these golf clubs? Is it a secondary option off the tee? Is it something that you're trying to carry into the green on a par 4 or par 5? So, no, I completely agree. And I think that's why you just can't assume that you're a 3 iron guy, so you're always going to be a 3 iron guy. I think it really depends on the course setup that you're playing. And oh, by the way, they're playing a different course setup this week for the BMW Championship. As I mentioned, they're going back to, I'm not going to go too deep on this because this feels like a very, like, soapboxy moment, but the PGA Tour does a really nice job of setting up their schedule for some fun golf courses. But some of these courses on the schedule just, to me, seem very like one of them. Love Memphis, one of my favorite places to go. Food there is amazing. But TPC Southwind, I mean, what are we doing? What there are plenty of other golf courses around in Tennessee that would be better suited for the FedEx St. Jude Championship, the first event of the playoffs. And look, it's been since 2014 since they've been in Colorado. And you got to go all the way back to 2006 since the last time they were at Castle Pines. They gotta start expanding. And I looked at the 2025 schedule. It's not any different than most years. I had heard rumblings that they might be shaking a few things up. It didn't materialize. But it is exciting to see them go back to Colorado. And I would expect, I don't know if you guys agree with me here, but I would expect that we might see more high-lofted fairway woods this week. Yes? No?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I would. I mean, yeah, I would think so.
say they have an opportunity to test anything and everything at their disposal, and you can rest assured that if there's an opportunity to have some type of advantage one way or another, that there's going to be a high-lofted fairway wood going in the bag if they see an opportunity to reach a green, hold a green, or play a shot that an iron won't necessarily give them. I mean, there's so much playability for those clubs. And like I said, for me specifically, and I wouldn't consider myself slow, but at the same time, I'm not the fastest player in the world. And driver head speed hangs out right around 110 miles an hour. And I just don't spin the ball and I don't hit it high. And that 20-degree fairway wood for me is awesome.
Yeah. It'll be a good club for this week because playing at an average of like 6,200 feet for elevation, it's not years ago when they played in Mexico City at Chapultepec, that was almost 8,000. And so the higher the elevation, the thinner the air, the further the ball is going to travel, but it's also going to lower your launch. So there's a lot of things going on there because everybody gets excited about going to play in Colorado or at higher elevations where you all of a sudden start feeling like you're Dustin Johnson or Tiger Woods. I mean, you can gain an extra 10 yards or maybe even 15 depending on your game, but you have to be able to figure out like what's my elevation for this week because for a tour pro. This is where it gets to be really important for golf tournaments like this. And Ket Notes, friend of the pod, PGA Tour rep, actually he sent me, and I'll post it on social. I'm sure we'll have it up here on the Foykup YouTube. But he sent me this little cheat sheet that Marty Jertson, and again Marty, friend of the pod, that Marty and his team at Ping have been working on. And it's tied into their Ballnamic website. And if you haven't been to Ballnamic, man, this thing is so cool. It's ballfitting.com. It is done by Ping, but there's really not any like Ping markings on it. And it's because it's just about getting your golf ball dialed in. And one of the coolest features on this website is you can type in your zip code and it will factor in the elevation that you play at and the temperatures that you typically play in. And then it'll give you a golf ball choice. And I tell you, one of the cool things, if you go to the website, is like type in different zip codes. Maybe you play golf in different states, or you've got a second home if you're lucky like that. And just see how the golf ball choices. It'll give you like a top 3, but see how your golf ball choices will change. I think that's one of the coolest things about it. But it does factor in for elevation, altitude. And one of the ways that Marty's able to factor it is by using Ballnamic. And so each one of the guys in the field this week, from what Kenton told me, it's funny, as we're doing this podcast, he just texted me and he said that they gave one to Corey Connors, Austin Eckroat, Pavon, Hovland, and Thigala all have the charts. So they're all geared for the golf ball they're using and the elevation for Castle Pines, which I think is really cool. And it's highly detailed all the way down to like what the change in distance is going to be, the percentage of that based on the temperature, because that's also another factor. But a general rule of thumb, if you do go and play in, say, Colorado, Titleist published kind of a calculation for multiplying the elevation in feet by 0.00116 to give you an idea of how much more distance you're going to be getting at. And this is like, for example, I'm talking about, let's say let's say we're talking Reno, like the Reno Tahoe event. That's at 1 mile of elevation. So that's 5,280 feet. So the increase, if you multiply 5,280 by 0.00116, it's going to give you roughly like 6%. So the increase at 5,280 is going to be about 6%. So it's going to be, obviously it's going to be more if you're at 6,200. You're going to see an increase of even more than that. So that's kind of a general rule of thumb for altitude. But I do. I think it's important because golfers go and they go, man, I'm hitting it 10 yards longer, but you don't realize that you've got to account for some other factors, and there one being that it's going to be launching lower because of the thinner air. And sometimes that requires you to add another club. Maybe you go with a higher lofted fairway wood instead of a 3 utility iron. It just depends on what you're seeing. And some golfers don't have the ability to play practice rounds. They're just going out there to have fun, but it's always better to have a golf club in the bag that's going to help you hold the green versus, watching it go 10 yards longer and hit off the back side of the green and go into the rough.
Yep. There's not a lot of course architects out there that design very many friendly things when you go long. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get closer to wrapping up this week's pod, I want you to let you know that Golf Pride is a proud sponsor of Fully Equipped. They've been a great sponsor of Fully Equipped for the last couple of years, and we appreciate them so much. We are talking today about the reverse taper putter grip. It's the most crucial split second in golf. You can't worry about if the ball is going in the hole or not if you haven't worried about what's happening at impact. That's what led Golf Pride to design a grip to ensure you're set up to succeed in that split second, the very moment where the putt is decided. With reverse taper technology, it ensures that you have a more consistently square face at impact. It's a grip that's more impactful during the most impactful split second in golf. And we've talked plenty about the reverse taper putter grip. It's a very unique design, and parallel putter grips have, I'd probably say over the last 5 to 10 years, have become a very popular option for golfers, especially if you are getting too handsy with your putter grip. They're a great way to eliminate the hands. But one of the things that Golf Pride spent years trying to figure out was, how do I design a putter grip that improves upon the parallel design? And that's what reverse taper does. It has a slim upper hand and a large lower hand. It also has a soft feel with an enhanced tacky texture and a dimple pattern throughout to support traction. I've used this grip, and I'm typically a guy who uses a very traditional pistol grip. This thing is seriously cool. It's probably the only grip that I've tried recently that is like worthy of bumping my current grip off my gamer. I mean, it's that cool. And the technology stabilizes both the hands. That slim upper and the larger lower is going to help square the putter face up at impact. And they've done testing against parallel style putter grips that proves that the reverse taper design is going to be more consistent for your game. And that larger lower hand is going to actually really help square that putter face up at impact. So if you want to learn more about the reverse taper technology, go check it out on golfpride.com. Own the moment at impact, own the putt. Thanks again to Golf Pride for being a sponsor of the pod. All right. So got a couple of things that I do want to point out. I don't know how much it's going to turn into a discussion or just me talking. This week is, which I kind of find cool. So you've got Castle Pines on the schedule, golf course that you don't see all that often. And you also have the Women's Open being played at St. Andrews, which anytime that you have an Open being played at the old course, I'm in. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the time of day or what's going on. I'm going to make sure that it's appointment viewing. I think this week could be really fun because they're talking about 50-mile-an-hour gusts.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah. I mean, Gene, you were over with the RNA, right? That one of the times, and it was probably blowing. Was it blowing 50?
Yeah, it was blowing 50, and it as a Californian, you have no frame of reference for it. I mean, none. So you get there, and I actually went the day before my appointment. I was going to go play the Castle course, and I was on the driving range, and the ball wouldn't stay on the tee to hit shots. And I just went, I'm done. I'm going to go watch football in the pub today. I mean, it wasn't going to happen. Then we got there, and I opened the door to my rental car, and I thought it was going to fly off. I mean, it caught that gust of wind. And I was just like, this is unbelievable. But this is the wild story. We were testing the consistency of the machine, and in that wind, and it was a 50-mile-an-hour crosswind. And what was so wild about it was we were swinging about 105 miles an hour, like an 11-degree launch, 2,500 spin. But when you had less than 150 RPM of side spin, that ball just cut through that wind. So it was a right to left 40, 50. It was just a crazy wind, but it didn't deviate that much. But as soon as you start putting a little curvature on the ball, that's when it goes off the planet. And and I've tested that subsequently in lesser winds. The moral of the story for golfers out there, if you are playing in brutal winds, do not shape your shot. Hit it as straight and low as possible to cut through the air. And it affected distance, as you would imagine it would. But what was so surprising was by minimizing side spin, it had very little effect on deviation.
I think I've
just be a robot.
Yeah, just be a robot.
Well, it's not be a robot. That's just mimic a robot, and learn from the robot and hit a straight shot. And if you can hit, I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but for example, if you're a right to left player, don't be for that week or for that time. In other words, just work on hitting it as straight and low as possible and having about as square of a swing path as you can with some stronger lofted clubs. And you'll be able to get around without, being beaten up too badly.
That kind of reminds me. I do a player interview before we start every fitting, right? And the amount of players that come in and I talk to them about their desired shot shape, and the amount of people that say, I just want to hit it straight. And I always kind of chuckle and I go, don't we all? And they're like, well, yeah, I usually hit it pretty straight. I just want to hit it straight. And I'm going, okay, zero is a scary place to live for the majority of us in the player world. And not to get off on too much of a tangent, but to hit the straight ball, it's the most difficult ball to hit. Like out of all 9 ball flights, the straight ball, which is close to a zero face, close to a zero path, and your face to path relationship inside of a half degree with a relatively centered struck shot. I mean, everything has to be almost perfect to get the ball to go truly straight. And a lot of the younger players that grow up on launch monitors and their face to path relationship is inside of that half degree differential, path is close to zero, face is close to zero. And they have a two-way miss that they fight and they can't understand why. And growing up on launch monitors and trying to perfect your numbers and get zeroed out. And then all of a sudden the two-way miss shows up and they don't know how to fix it. And you'll have so many players out there that have a stock ball flight left to right, right to left, that they know that they can produce no matter what. The players that come in and I just want to hit it straight. And I just kind of chuckle and do the you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
Well, and to your point, Kris, especially in relation to the ball laws, you can have a push or a pull that's got zero side spin. So it's all about face to path. So in other words, you can swing inside out and play the ball to the right as long as that side spin number is really minimal. And that's where like a launch monitor, like the Foresight Quad Max really comes in, is it really gives you accurate side spin. And you can start to look at side spin as a component and know that you need to be underneath 150 RPM of side spin to get an effective straight shot. And you could do the same thing with the pull. It's just so you've got your face angle, but then you've got your path. And to your point, if your path is zero, then your face angle needs to be zero. If your path is 2 degrees inside out, then your face angle needs to be squared to that and vice versa. But it's just the key of getting that face consistently, and that's what's going to allow you to cut through the wind and not allow the wind to turn that ball over in one direction or the other.
One of the craziest ones I saw was almost 11 and 11. Zeroed it out, but 11 and 11.
Wow.
Man.
And I had to recalibrate the quad, and because I'm sitting here and I'm going, wow, like that's not right. I mean, just dead pulls over the top, dead shut face, left, but the ball wasn't moving from where he started it. And I'm like,
wow.
Face to path is almost perfectly zeroed out. And
At
the efficiency
11
yeah.
close. Wow.
And the efficiency was, way up. And I'm sitting here and I'm watching this move and I'm like, no way. Like something's off. Hold on a second. Let me just recalibrate. Let me reset. And I went through and I reset
how far
everything.
left was the ball? How far left did the ball end up?
Oh man. I mean, he was 40 plus yards offline.
Oh, I was gonna guess like 200. I mean, that's like 11
no,
degrees.
we weren't dealing with that kind of speed, but I mean,
okay, gotcha.
He was 40 plus offline, and he's like, yeah, I usually just set up over here on the right side of the tee box, and I aim it down the right side, and I know I'm gonna hit it a little left, and I'm like, a little, dude,
a little left,
yeah, just a little. And I'm watching this move.
You're so close. You're so close.
Yeah. I was like, you are the most inefficient player I've ever seen in my life. Like, I feel like I should get you like a pin or a little trophy or something. But 11 and 11, and he zeroed it out. And I'm going,
wow.
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of shit, and that's pretty impressive.
If it works for you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the only like win story that I have from St. Andrews, I think probably told on the pod, was playing St. Andrews with my dad, and it was blowing so hard that day that my dad got a picture of me leaning back into the wind with it holding me up, and I still have that. I still have that picture. It's just one of the wildest moments I think I've ever had on a golf course, blowing that hard. And I was like whatever 13, 14 years old. Trying to hit driver into the wind, and there were a couple of locals in front of us. I think we were the only ones on the golf course that day, and they're just hitting it just along the ground, and I'm just trying to like wail at the ball. There was a lot of hubris going on, trying to think that I could beat the elements with my driver. It was never going to happen.
No.
But anyway, so for this week, I noticed that Nelly Korda is testing, at least for the moment, a TaylorMade Spider Tour X, which that putter is still red hot. A lot of guys on the PGA Tour that are using it. And really, I mean, if you look at Nelly's bag, that's really the last like piece of the puzzle. Everything else in her bag is all TaylorMade. So she's inching closer to a full TaylorMade bag potentially. So we'll see if she makes the change. Apparently she didn't like the way that she played at the Olympics. So why not change it for the Open? Plus, I mean, if it's blowing 50, it's never a bad thing to have a high MOI mallet to
a little more stability there.
Yeah, try and wrap the ball up the hole. The other gear change, I guess before we do that one, I do need to get into the last ad read of this week's episode from our good friends at Fairway Jockey. If you haven't checked out fairwayjockey.com, make sure you do that. We constantly post stories on golf.com, and we try to plug in the, kind of a heads up that you can go to Fairway and purchase the products. And they do a really good job of like day of for like a media embargo launch. They're already like set up with the pre-orders. So if you want to go get in and you like the idea of a particular club and you want to pre-order, you can do that at fairwayjockey.com. They have the world's most extensive collection of aftermarket shafts. Another thing that we've talked about before. I would suggest getting with Kris before buying some of these aftermarket shafts, because as you will notice going through their website, they're pricey. But that's just the way that aftermarket shafts, that's just the way they are. They're not cheap. But you will notice a difference from a lot of the stock offerings out there. They have the lowest prices on custom-built golf clubs, up to 20% less than the average club fitter quote. And if you use promo code Fully Equipped, that's FULLYEQUIPPED. Again, FULLYEQUIPPED. I don't know why I read it out. I'm pretty sure people know how to spell Fully Equipped, but I just do it anyway because I'm a dope. You get an extra 10% off when you purchase. I mean, that's pretty dang good. And when you're also talking that they're up to 30% less than the price you're going to get from a Club Champion or one of the other big box club fitters, you're going to gain even a bigger discount. So again, go check it out at fairwayjockey.com. Extensive line of products, good people over there. And thanks again to Fairway Jockey for sponsoring the podcast. Last one I want to touch on really, really quickly. Sahith Theegala, who's in the mix for the season-ending FedEx Cup. He went back to an answer 2 putter. It was a Karsten 1966 answer 2. Putter he's used for a while. Pretty standard blade. But he had been using a PLD Tyne S. And I spoke to Dylan Goodwin, who runs putters on the PGA Tour for Ping, and asked him about it. I was like, man, he actually putted really well. I went back and looked because Theegala before this week his last event was 3M. And I was like, hey, what's going on with Theegala? Is he I thought he would be happy with it. He finished T6 and he was 9th in strokes gained putting with the new putter. And he goes back to the blade and he finished T46 and he was 38th in strokes gained putting. The Ping guys told me that they were actually shocked that Sahith decided to use the Tyne in the first place because it was a counterbalance version. And we're running out of time on this pod, but we can discuss counterbalance putters for, I feel like we've discussed every topic on this pod, but we could kick it around again if we want to. But they hadn't worked with him specifically on a counterbalance version, but it seemed to have worked. But the craziest thing that I just want to get your opinion on. So Dylan told me that Sahith will test putters Monday through Wednesday that have no chance of making the bag, and then he'll just use the gamer on Thursday. Is that like psycho behavior? I think it was Adam Scott, if I'm remembering correctly, years ago when I talked to him, had said he uses different putters early in the week because he likes to trick his eyes, different visuals, different head shapes, and then he kind of goes back to the gamer. But is it crazy to use a putter for 3 days of practice that has no chance of making the bag and then go back to a gamer?
I mean, yes. Personally, I feel, yeah.
Yes. That's the answer.
The short answer, yes. I feel like that would really screw me up. But again, I'm not a PGA Tour player with that kind of feel and consistency. But if I took multiple putters or just 2 different putters and played my practice rounds with one shape, feel, look, and then had a quote-unquote gamer that I took out with no practice round on those greens, on those surfaces, no. I need all the help I can get. And if I'm messing with crap like that before going and putting it in competition, nope, I'm screwed.
Yeah. I'm such a head case. Yeah, I'm a head case. There's no way that would ever work. If I used a putter for a local event and I had practice rounds and I was rolling putts with something else, I'm done for. Step up on the first tee on Thursday, mark me down for an 85, trunk slamming, and go home. Anyway, I was thinking about that. I was like, man, is this normal? This is not normal. But hey,
not normal.
He's playing pretty well. I think he's 8th right now in the FedEx Cup standings. So he's got a chance to win a cool, I think it's like 25 mil for winning the playoffs this year. It's a lot. Why not? It's a lot of money. Anyway,
do people watch those? Are the television ratings decent for those events?
I don't think they are. I don't think they're. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about the live stuff, but they had a showdown between it was Brooks and Rahm. And I think it did like 163K, and they were comparing it to like the pickleball tournament, the pro pickleball tournament on Fox did like 256 on the same day, and that was live on the CW. I mean, it's not Fox, but still, the numbers are not good. The numbers are not good, and I think the PGA Tour is suffering from it too, because I think once again we've beat a dead horse on this one, but it spreads the talent too thin, and it's just a watered down product, and I don't think people are all that excited. I chimed in on this week's Tour Confidential on golf.com and said that they should just go back to the old format. Leave it as a Tour Championship, one event, show up, top 30, and whoever wins. If you want to do match play, cool, but I don't think a lot of guys would like that, because if you get somebody who's hot and a guy's spent all season at number one and he's played well and he gets bounced in the first round, that's frustrating. But just level playing field, none of this gimmicky stuff with giving guys, a 3 or a 4 shot advantage over the rest of the field. Go out there, play it. Old school style Tour Championship. I'm not a fan. I don't think it really gets anybody all that excited. And now that they have the signature events for the Tour and the top 50 get into those, I think it's making it more difficult to break into the big money events. And so if you're not in those big money events, it's more difficult to make the top 70 for the first event and then the top 50 for the second. But play better. That's my mantra. If you don't like the system, just play better.
Just play better.
Just play better. All right. Well, that'll wrap it for episode 253 of Fully Equipped. As always, if you want more gear goodness from us, check us out on all of the social channels. We're at Fully Equipped Golf on YouTube. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Also at Fully Equipped Golf on Instagram and at Fully_Equipped on Twitter. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week.